This video is brought to you by viewers like you. Thanks for letting me do this for so long. If you're under the impression that I have to be running out of things to rank in the hit video game The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, I feel like you're underestimating both how much there is to do in this game and also my ability to keep talking until someone tells me to stop. So we're back again with the rankings since you guys seem to be enjoying them, like, wow. And having already ranked dungeons and boss fights and Zonai devices and regular enemies, I realized just as the last video went up that I really should be ranking Link's abilities, shouldn't I? He's a talented fella who is capable of doing things that are barely explainable most of the time, and with Tears of the Kingdom giving him a host of Zonai abilities alongside a raft of unlockable skills, I've got a surprisingly large list of stuff to get through. Some of it good, some of it not so good. And obviously, there's only one place to start. I think I speak for most, if not every person who has played Tears of the Kingdom when I ask, what the fuck is the map doing on the ability wheel? I have to count it as part of this ranking since it's right next to actual abilities the Link can't perform unless he opens this specific menu, but of course you can open the map and use the map by pressing the minus button and going through the Pura pad. Obviously, I'm not ranking the map as the least useful thing that Link has in his arsenal, but even the most wildly optimistic defender would have a hard time describing opening a map of Hyrule as an ability. I mean, it is helpful to know where you are and where you need to go, and if the map was hidden behind the minus button exclusively, I wouldn't be criticizing it right now. But when it's also a part of this circle right alongside game-changingly powerful abilities that we'll get to later, it really doesn't belong. Cartography just isn't all that special in the Zelda game. And neither's photography, to be honest, but I will at least accept that the camera is a lot more deserving of being classified as an ability. It is a strange classification though, since this is Shikatech rubbing shoulders with Zonai abilities, so it's pretty much the camera app on the Pura pad that is treated roughly the same as Link's new magic hand. It functions pretty much exactly as how it did in Breath of the Wild, mainly being used to fill up the compendium, which itself is handy when paired with the Sheikah sensor, but it also finds the occasional use in side quests and even a significant role as part of a main quest. What you see is what you get, and it's not hiding any secret skill other than maybe for styling on enemies when the time arises? Maybe you should be able to exercise enemies with the camera, you know, like in Fatal Frame? Did you know that AMIIBO have been around for 9 years now? I know, time sure has flown, but if you think about all the figures that have been released in that time, it only makes sense that Tears of the Kingdom would try to reduce the number of AMIIBO exclusive items and armor. So all the cool throwback outfits that were previously locked behind paid content are now hidden away in this vast overworld, which is obviously wonderful, but it does make the AMIIBO ability a lot less important. It can still drop items out of the sky, and it can give you a Epona as well as a bunch of unique paraglider designs that you can't get anywhere else, but it's just not that good anymore. They sure did replace Wolf Link with a bunch of raw meat. Oh my god, what happened? So I'm not just ranking Link's abilities, since he's borrowed most of those from Rauru and the Zonai anyway, but to beef the video out a bit, I am of course including the Sage Vows that eventually become as much a part of your arsenal as anything from this special little circle. So let's talk vows, which aren't designed all that well since they're all mapped to the same button and can only be activated by walking up to the right spirit and pressing A. Sidon's vow has a different problem though, and that'll be that it just isn't all that good. I see the uses, and there's a niche where you can surround Link in water to make Zora weapons twice as strong, but this is primarily a defensive ability that can only be activated by finding Sidon in the middle of combat and praying that he will stand still long enough for you to land an A button press on him. It definitely has its uses, and the boss of the water temple would be a lot more annoying without the water slash, but it just doesn't do a lot for me. Which is also my general assessment of the super secret special hidden ability in Tears of the Kingdom, but at least there's a novelty factor to this. If you want to avoid spoilers, then I have a time code that you can skip to, but for everyone else, I suppose we need to get on with things and talk about why the Earthwake isn't all that good. The positives are that the quest surrounding it is a lot of fun, since infiltrating the Yiga clan brings me a huge amount of catharsis after the stealth mission in Breath of the Wild, and I appreciate that there's something so significant as a new ability hiding away in an optional side quest. However, the Earthwake isn't as powerful as all this effort would have you believe. It's the Stone Edge looking attack that the Blade Masters use on you, which you'd think would be awesome, and it definitely looks cool, but you can only use it if you haven't got a weapon equipped, and it doesn't do a lot of damage. I can see it being used to defeat very weak enemies without using up weapon durability, but it can't be used on crates or ore deposits for the same benefit. I suppose it's better than nothing. Does anyone else remember how amazing Urbosa's Fury was in the last game? It was great fun. You could activate it as part of normal combat by charging up an attack, and it would do a huge amount of damage to everything in its vicinity. Tears of the Kingdom's equivalent is the Vow of RIJU, which may look somewhat similar since you're able to summon lightning on demand, but it's a lot more awkward to use. I do appreciate that it doesn't come with much of a cooldown, and you can definitely fire them off a lot quicker than Urbosa's Fury past the first 3, but you have to first find Riju's spirit in the midst of combat, then you have to wait for a yellow circle to reach whatever enemy you want to hit, and then you need to use arrows to tell her which one to target. It's a lot of work, and outside of when it's absolutely necessary, like when the Gibdos are attacking, I just never found the patience to use it frequently. You do know that I can fuse like half a dozen electric objects to sticks and achieve the same result, yeah? Alright, so we're definitely stretching the definition of ability with the Vow of Mineru, which doesn't let you piggyback off of a sage's ability, but simply just lets you piggyback on a Zonai mech. That sounds absolutely incredible, and it kind of is, but again, it's not that helpful in practice. You can fuse objects to its arms, which is particularly handy if you give it elemental attacks and let it do its own thing alongside you in combat, but like the others, it's not something I often consider in the heat of combat. It is quite handy for crossing large patches of gloom in the depths, which can sometimes be a necessity if you're wandering around parts of the depths that you haven't explored yet, but that aside, it doesn't do a lot for me. There are easier ways of moving around the world and a lot easier ways of doing damage. Which perhaps gets to the heart of the main issue with the vows, they just don't work all that well during combat. The Vow of Yunobo works much the same way, since Yunobo can roll up into a ball and be blasted towards whatever enemies you fancy taking down with a flaming ball of Goron, but the lack of immediacy makes it hard to use when you're in the middle of fighting something. However, Yunobo can be put to good work elsewhere outside of combat, and if you launch this flaming rock man at one of those breakable rock walls, you can save so much time and weapon durability. Really, anything that would require a mining weapon to break through can be busted through with ease thanks to the Vow of Yunobo, and this is his primary use in my eyes. Otherwise, there's no point keeping him around to be worse than useless. So, if you're unsure of where this video is headed by this point, the new Zonai hand abilities in Tears of the Kingdom are completely and utterly amazing in every way, to the point where deciding which one is technically the worst is very challenging. In the end, I've gone with Ascend, which is still such a valuable tool that helps Link escape complicated caves and easily traverse structures that have a lot of verticality to them. I sometimes forget that this ability exists since it's so closely tied to exploring the world and not every part of Hyrule exists above Link's head, but I think of the time that Ascend has saved me and thank Nintendo for including what was originally a tool used during development. Coupled with conventional climbing, and Link now has options for how to scale large structures. My only slight complaint is that the range isn't as big as I would like, and the detection of flat surfaces that I can squeeze through is a tad finicky at times, but I know that Tears of the Kingdom would feel very different if I couldn't morph my way through ceilings. As terrifying a concept as that is. So we've worked out that Sage Vows aren't the best when used in combat, so do you know what the best vow of the lot is? The only one whose ability isn't really suited to combat at all. Well, that's not technically true, since Tulin's Gust of Wind can apparently be used to blow enemies around, but I don't think I've ever used it in that way. Yunobo's Vow has this special property that it will attach itself to the front of any vehicle you're piloting, so you've got a reusable Goron cannon, and Tulin is similarly contextually useful whenever you're opening the paraglider. He provides a short burst of wind to move you forward horizontally, and while it isn't anything too nutty, or even as good as Revali's Gale in Breath of the Wild, it is by far the most useful Sage Vow. Anytime you're paragliding, you'd be stupid to not have Tulin activated so you can benefit from those brief moments every few seconds where your altitude is being maintained, and that can often be the difference between reaching an area and falling just a bit short. He's also a lot more useful when he is doing the combat because he shoots arrows and is shockingly efficient at landing critical headshots. He makes Lionel's a dream to fight, frankly. I won't lie, AUTOBUILD is hard to rank. A lot of its qualities are carried over from how amazing ULTRAHAND is, and obviously we can't have AUTOBUILD without ULTRAHAND, but the trick is in the name. ULTRAHAND can sometimes become tedious if you need to recreate the same vehicle over and over again, so that's why AUTOBUILD is so ridiculously powerful. You can copy previous designs and construct them super quickly to save the time and effort of manually attaching each individual part, which is a massive deal with any kind of complicated creation. The part of auto build that took me an embarrassingly long time to realize and even longer to fully appreciate is that you don't need the individual Zonai devices to recreate a blueprint, since Zonite can easily be substituted for any missing parts, and holy fuck, that means you can have any of your creations anywhere in the game. That's a little ridiculous, if I'm being honest. The big question coming into Tears of the Kingdom was about whether or not this game would fix the weapon durability problem that so many people didn't appreciate in Breath of the Wild. In reality, Nintendo didn't so much fix the issue as make it slightly irrelevant, since now weapons are significantly easier to come by thanks to the fuse ability. This is effectively the quintessential curveball solution to a game design problem. Instead of making weapons repairable or more durable, now you can just make more weapons on the fly and create specific weapons to be used for whatever scenario you have to deal with at any given moment. Nintendo are the sort of chef that wouldn't cook you a meal, but they'll give you the ability to snap your finger and create a cheeseburger out of thin air. If you have the monster parts or objects in your environment and enough sticks or corrupted swords, you can glue anything you like to whatever you have and find a solution. Tears of the Kingdom is a game where you can fuse a bookshelf to a sword and shoot arrows with raw meat attached to it. How do you even come up with something like that? If fuse is a left field concept for a Zelda game, then time manipulation is almost a little bit boring. Like, I'm pretty sure that every 3D Zelda game has had some form of time control in it, and on the face of it, recall is just a way of rewinding time. Majora's Mask called, and the lawsuit is scary. But actually, no, recall is completely broken and one of the most overpowered abilities in any Zelda game ever. It's actually kinda hard to talk about without sounding like an overly ambitious game designer, but any inorganic object that is moving or has moved recently, either naturally or unnaturally, like from being thrown or powered, can be rewound through time until the end of this short timer. You can rewind objects thrown by enemies, you can rewind your own Zonai devices to recharge the battery, you can rewind objects that you have moved with ULTRAHAND so that you can climb on top of them and reach somewhere that would have otherwise been a little challenging to get to. The scope of what recall can do is frightening at times, and it does recontextualize how you see objects interact with your environment. If it moves or has moved in the past, you can mess around with it. My personal headcanon is that someone was playtesting Breath of the Wild, or maybe a journalist was playing it for the first time, but both of them couldn't work out why magnesis worked on metal boxes but not like rocks and stuff. Like, why can't I lift up this tree trunk? I want to lift up this tree trunk! Combine this with the fact that Nintendo have so clearly seen all those videos of people creating a flying machine out of minecarts, and the devs practically felt obligated to put something like ULTRAHAND in Tears of the Kingdom. This is the one ability that completely changes how this game is played and how you see the world around you. On its own, ULTRAHAND gives the entire landscape of Hyrule a new perspective, since you now have an ability that allows you to construct creations out of just about any object you can lay your eyes on. It is the catalyst for so many batshit insane creations that have fundamentally moved Tears of the Kingdom out of Breath of the Wild shadow and into this insanely creative, customizable experience that no one could have predicted for The Legend of Zelda even as recently as 5 years ago. I don't know if this franchise has a long-term future with this kind of construction mechanic, but even if this is all we ever get, there are enough unique combinations of things that can be stuck together to keep you busy for a lifetime. Think of all the penis robots you haven't made yet. And that is every ability in Tears of the Kingdom. Do you agree with how they're ranked, or would you have something else at the top? Let me know in a comment down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and hit subscribe for more, and hit that bell for notifications of every new upload. If you need something else to watch right now, I ranked every normal enemy last week, and I also want to thank my top supporters on Patreon, including Devon Hutt, Scott Riker, and Fusion Warrior. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.